What is going on, YouTube? Andrew Miller from Hook'emHeadlines.com and the Hook'em Horn Show. Coming back at y'all today with my post-game reaction and takeaways after just a wild 33-30, very lucky overtime win for Texas. Number 7 Texas gets the win over number 23 Kansas State, thanks to a fourth down stop in overtime, 4th and goal. Chris Kleiman decides to go for it. I think a pretty bold decision considering the spot Kansas State was at. You know, their offense had all the momentum at the time, and Kansas State ends regulation on a 23-3 run, 23-6 if you include the overtime field goal by Texas. And Texas gets some good interior pressure from the defensive line. Texas ends up getting a wrap on Will Howard. He throws it up. Texas bats it to the ground and game over. So they survive again despite what was a near complete collapse. What would have been more reminiscent of a Sark team from like 2 years ago. Not only did Texas have a double-digit lead in this game in the second half, they had a 27-7 lead with pretty much all momentum on their side. It really looked like Texas was in a spot to put this game away when you had the strip sack by sophomore edge rusher Ethan Burke, his second sack of the game. I'll get to him in a second. I think he was awesome today. It was recovered by Jalen Ford. Texas was able to run it in on the first play. Jonathan Brooks gets in on like a 5-yard touchdown run. And it looks like Texas has all the momentum. The following drive, they're in a spot to really salt the game away. But really after that drive is when everything started to go south for the Longhorns. When it was 27-7 late in the third quarter, Will Howard ends up leading a long touchdown drive for the Wildcats that's capped by a 20-plus yard receiving touchdown by Phillip Brooks. A couple of Texas defenders missed bad tackles on that play, and it was all downhill from there really for the Longhorns. You had a bad Malik Murphy interception early in the fourth quarter. There was just really no one in the area. You don't need to throw that ball, and he put it in a dangerous area where no one can make a play on it, and except for the Kansas State defenders. Sure enough, Kansas State gets interception, sets them up in the red area. They get a touchdown, and then the following drive on, I believe, the third play, Jonathan Brooks fumbles, Kansas State recovers, and it takes them, a play or two. I believe one play to get the ball in the end zone. And at that point, game's tied up. You got a little fortunate because Kansas State missed an extra point. You have a chance to put things away after Kansas State gives you the ball back with about 2 minutes remaining. You go 3 and out. Sure enough, Kansas State executes 4th down, able to get down in within Texas's 30-yard line, and they nail a long field goal, send it to overtime. Texas, gets the field goal on their first drive in overtime, and may I say, Bert Auburn was awesome in this game. 4-4, completely on point, very clutch. I nailed 4 field goals, I believe 3 of which were from over 40 yards, and obviously that proved vital for the Longhorns in this game. So Texas moves to 8-1 on the season, 5-1 in Big 12 play. Kansas State falls to 6-3, and then 4-2 in Big 12 play. So Texas right now is in outright first place in the Big 12 standings. At some point today, there will be another team tied for first place with them. Whether it's, if Iowa State beats Kansas, then Iowa State will move back into that first place tie with Texas. And then depending on the winner of OU or Oklahoma State, the winner of that game will also be in a 3-way tie with Texas in that scenario for first place in the Big 12. And Texas did a nice job, though, of shutting down the run for Kansas State. I think if you had told me at the beginning of the game that Kansas State rushes for 33 yards on 29 carries, that Texas wins this game by probably 2 or 3 scores without a doubt, and they probably should have. The problem for Texas, though, you end up losing the turnover battle. So Texas lost. They lost 1 fumble, I believe, fumbled the ball twice, and then you also had the 2 interceptions. Texas did get 1 interception and then a fumble on Kansas State. So, while you lose the turnover battle by 1, it could have been much worse if the defense didn't make those big plays in the third quarter. Michael Taft had the interception. And then through the air, Kansas State did pick apart Texas in the second half without a doubt. Kansas State finishes up with over 325 passing yards, I believe 4 passing touchdowns from Will Howard. So Kansas State ends up getting around 70% of their passing yards in the second half, a little over 220. And so, I think in this game for Texas, the defense kind of comes away looking porous from the second half. Texas, they were set up in some tough situations for sure, but the red zone defense was not as strong as we've been accustomed to. The pass defense was really an issue, especially considering the secondary was pretty healthy. So that's an area to address. And then overall for Texas, this team looked a lot like a Sark team from 2 years ago, where you jump out to the early lead, you got a double-digit lead heading into the second half, and then you just end up collapsing on yourself. Texas does find a way to get it done, but this one feels like kind of the luckiest win that Texas has had. But this is two escapes now in the last 3 weeks. You had Houston a couple of weeks ago, and then you get the convincing win over BYU last week, but now you barely escaped Kansas State today. So Texas is going to have to solidify both sides of the ball. You hope you get Quinn Ewers back soon, and you just got to play more complete football. Texas was a good second half team in the beginning of the season. They have not been in the second half of the year. Let me go ahead and get into some of my takeaways. There are probably like 100 takeaways I could have from this game, but narrowed down to 4 with my post-game article. Link that in the description below, as I always do. And then also get into some studs and duds and look forward to what's next for Texas heading into Week 11. So my first thing here, I want to give a shout out to Ethan Burke. He'll also be one of my studs from this game, but I thought Ethan Burke was awesome in this game. And when coming in, it didn't even look like he would be active, but there was a report that I mentioned on the site earlier this week that there was an outside chance that he comes back, and he was able to after getting a knee scope last week. He hurt his knee in Week 8 against Houston. Hadn't played since then, but again, he was able to give it a go. He was extremely impactful in this game. 2 sacks, multiple quarterback pressures, and then you had the forced fumble. He leads the team in sacks now with 5 on the season, despite missing, a game and a half between Houston and BYU, and then also, he's been playing with that knee injury all season. Burke made his impact felt immediately in this one. He really emerges that impact pass rusher that Texas so direly needs. To that note, I also thought that Barron Sorrell, junior edge rusher, played really well in this game. I believe he had an early sack in this one. Was pretty good in run defense. Overall, I just think that this was a great game from Texas's edge rushers. So a lot of props to Ethan Burke and Barron Sorrell. Good to have Burke back. He's obviously a huge part of this pass rush. His length coming off the edge is proving pretty vital for Texas this season. My next takeaway is just talking about some of the highs and lows of Malik Murphy, not only in this game, but really in the last 2 games. Malik Murphy comes out of the gates just on fire. Completes 7 of 11 passing attempts, 152 yards, a touchdown. Had 2 nice deep ball completions to Adonai Mitchell in this game. One that went for a 40-plus yard touchdown. He posted the stat on the Twitter page. He had the second most passing yards in the first quarter in Big 12 play of any quarterback this season. I think Alan Bowman with around 200 against Kansas a few weeks ago is at the top of that list. And it looks like Murphy's on pace to have a career day and lead the Longhorns to a big victory coming out of the first quarter again. He's completing some nice short, intermediate, and deep throws. Looks like he's in a great rhythm. Ground game is playing well off of him. Texas is completely dominating on defense, and then you get to kind of halfway point of the third quarter. And before then, there was issues for Murphy. And then after the first quarter, Malik Murphy completes roughly, I think it was 35 or 40% of his passing attempts. Under 100 yards and 2 interceptions. And so the final 45 minutes of this game, very forgettable for Murphy. He doesn't really even lead a full touchdown drive. And, there was a lot of questions asked in this game whether we were going to see Arch Manning after that interception that Murphy had on the kind of a bad play early in the fourth quarter. I think those questions were fair. I was a little surprised at that point because we did see Arch getting warmed up on the sideline, not to see him in this game. But, this was a difficult spot for Malik, second career start, to be put through adversity like this against Kansas State. Obviously is going to be something that any freshman is going to have challenges in. And I think that if I saw someone post this on Twitter too, and I think it sums it up well. If Murphy was the only issue in this game for the Longhorns, they probably would have come away with a double-digit win in regulation. I just don't think that. I just don't think he got the things done that he needed to do for Texas to win this game handily. I pinpointed these 2 things in my preview article coming into this one in the preview video. Murphy needed to take care of the football and just effectively get the ball to Texas's playmakers in space in the short passing game, screens, and then just with some first read looks. But he was off target even when he wasn't under pressure in the pocket. He was still off target for pretty much all of the last 45 minutes of this game. And then he wasn't really taking good care of the football either, second straight week with 2 turnovers in a game. And so There's going to be some things to button up if Murphy is going to be the starting quarterback next week, but I'll get into the injury stuff a little bit more later. We've seen this 2 weeks in a row now where you get two different versions of Malik Murphy against BYU. He just finished the game better than he started. This one, he finished the game a lot worse than he started. So my next takeaway, I want to talk a little bit about just the collapse that Texas had in the second half. And, it was really something that started, I think, in the first half, but Texas did end up snagging some momentum back in the third quarter when you had that touchdown run from Jonathan Brooks. And, you got back up by 20 points, which was the biggest lead that Texas had at any point of this game. But Texas, you have a pretty disastrous sequence late in the first half. You get put behind the sticks on third down. And this was just before halftime. Ryan Sanborn had a punt blocked by Kansas State. Kansas State is set up in plus territory, and Will Howard gets a nice roughly 25-yard touchdown pass to Phillip Brooks, where Texas misses a couple of tackles. At that point, it's 17-7 heading into the locker room at halftime. Again, Texas was able to rattle off 10 straight points to start the third quarter. But then from then on out, Kansas State really had the momentum for the rest of the game. Kansas State had 2 turnovers that they were able to convert on, get 13 points out of because they had the missed extra point. But you had that bad Malik Murphy interception. Then Jonathan Brooks fumbled the ball. Will Howard got 2 of his 4 touchdown passes on the day on those 2 drives. And at that point, Texas is reeling. They're not moving the ball well on offense. You had multiple drives stalled, and you're kind of worried about turnovers from then on out. From my count, Murphy still had 2 turnover-worthy plays after that in the second half, and Texas just all out of sorts. And then you do get a bit of life with Bert Auburn hitting that field goal late in the fourth quarter, where Texas goes ahead 30-27. They have a chance to salt the game away, and then you don't get any more first downs in the last 5 minutes. And ultimately, Kansas State is able to, they had that missed field goal from within 30 yards. I believe it was a 28-yard field goal with about 2.5 minutes to go. About 2.5 minutes. Texas doesn't get any first down. Any first downs. Kansas State burns their timeouts, gives the ball back to Will Howard. They convert a key 4th down. Sure enough, Chris Tennant hits a clutch, I believe, 45-yard field goal to send the game into overtime. Texas manages to survive late, but this was really the biggest collapse I've seen out of Texas probably since the OU game in 2021. There were some scares in the second half last year, but I don't think anything quite like this. You had the big lead against Kansas State last season, but I think it was like a 14-point comeback they had, and it was on the road. This was a bad collapse in the second half at home. There's no two ways about it. Texas is going to have to find a way to stay more buttoned up in the second half. I think for Sark, rely a little bit more on the ground game. I know Brooks had that fumble in the fourth quarter, but I don't think Texas was running the ball enough. You had so much success doing it in the first half, and you had the chance to wear down Kansas State. Texas's defense was on the field a lot in the second half on key drives, and I think that it was a mistake to pass the ball as much as they did. Also, I just think that on defense, you have to be more buttoned up in pass coverage. Will Howard and the Wildcats, I mentioned over 220 passing yards in the second half after they didn't even reach. I don't even know if they reached 100 in the first half. It would be around there. And so, you can't have this sort of thing fall apart where you've had the pass coverage just completely exploited in the second half. It happened against Houston. That resulted in a big comeback for them where they were able to tie the game up late, and you escape with a 31-24 win. And then today, you have the pass coverage fall apart again. The difference is today, Kansas State is not as good of a receiving core as Houston has, and Texas's defense was much healthier, so you had fewer excuses because you had Ryan Watts in the game, you had Jahdae Barron in for the full game, and you had Terrence Brooks, and so I just I think that there's a lot of issues for the secondary to clean up, and just in a sense, Sark's got to figure it out in the second half. This isn't going to get the job done to make it to the Big 12 championship game and still compete for a spot in the college football playoff if you're blowing these sort of second half leads like Texas has been the last few weeks. My last point I wanted to talk about here is just I think Texas needs Quinn Ewers back as soon as possible. He was fantastic for Texas before he went down with the shoulder injury in Week 8 against Houston. He was listed as it still is listed as week to week, but there was a report from Bruce Feldman on the Big Noon Kickoff today that said that there is some optimism that Texas could get Quinn Ewers back against TCU next weekend in Fort Worth. Said that Ewers had thrown in practice on Thursday. Also saw a report that he had thrown in practice on Monday. So, he had that grade 2 AC joint sprain against Houston in the second half, and then missed the last 2 games. But it sounds like he's back at least throwing in practice, not in full pads by my understanding, but definitely his recovery is moving in the right direction. It's progressing, and so I think this is going to be the biggest storyline of next week is Quinn Ewers going to be healthy and ready to go? But it sounds like the plan is for him to get back for either the TCU or Iowa State games. That's from multiple reports this week. So yeah, I want to talk about some more studs and duds from this game and just kind of look forward to what's next for Texas. I already mentioned one of my studs earlier in the video. I think Ethan Burke deserves a ton of props for this game. And he was tremendous. The 2 sacks now leading the team with 5 on the season. He's also got 3 sacks in the last game and a half that he's played. He had a sack against Houston before he went down with injury then, and he's got, I believe it's now 3.5 or 4 tackles for loss as well. He finishes up with 3 tackles, 3 defensive stops, and then I believe 3 quarterback pressures in this game. Barron Sorrell, I mentioned it earlier, 3 quarterback pressures, 2 QB hits, 1 sack. He also had multiple defensive stops in this game. I thought he played pretty well, setting the edge and run defense. Again, played a key role in helping Texas hold Kansas State just to 33 rushing yards in this game. And also on defense, I want to give a shout to Devondre Sweat and also Mo Blackwell, and then Michael Taft. There's multiple guys I thought that played pretty well in this game. Really until he kind of had some of those slip-ups in the fourth quarter. But, Devondre Sweat was just a menace up the middle. He had multiple defensive stops, 1 TFL in run defense, 3 quarterback pressures by my counting, but even that feels a little bit low. 2 batted balls. He was just making plays all over the place. There wasn't much that Kansas State could do. They either had to double-team Devondre Sweat or Byron Murphy. And even some of the other guys up the middle, Vernon Broughton had a tackle for loss and run defense and a couple of quarterback pressures. Alfred Collins was playing. I thought he played pretty well in this one. I know he's still dealing with an injury, but the interior defensive line was pretty critical here. Michael Taft, 7 combined tackles, 1 interception, his 3rd straight week with a pick. It was a really nice pick, too, that he had. On a deep pass from Will Howard. There was actually a really nice pass, and I thought Taft just had incredible reactions to be able to snag that ball out of midair. And then Mo Blackwell, multiple defensive stops. In the last 2 weeks, he's been tremendous. Seems like he's fully back from injury now after missing the first few games of the season for Texas. So overall, those guys on defense I thought played pretty well. On offense, got to give a shout to Adonai Mitchell, 8 catches, 149 yards, 1 touchdown. It's clear that he is the favorite target for Malik Murphy. Now he's got over 200 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns on that would be on 11 catches in the last 2 weeks. Again, all Murphy's touchdown passes have gone to him. I like to give a shout as well to Jonathan Brooks. I know he had the fumble in this game, but he ran really hard. So did CJ Baxter. Baxter had that nice 50-plus yard touchdown run on a 4th down. I meant to mention that earlier in the video, but that was the longest touchdown run of his career. I really thought that was a really big, kind of breakout moment for him, and just a huge play in Texas for this game. Brooks and Baxter combined for over 200 rushing yards, well over 6 yards a carry and 2 touchdowns. Each of them as well had multiple explosive run plays over 20 yards. So I thought they played well, even though Kansas State's run defense kind of bowed up in the second half. On offense, though, I thought Cam Williams had some issues. He had multiple false starts, and this was really his first game getting heavy snaps at Texas. I'll be interested to see the snap count for him. But Christian Jones, I saw he was dealing with a hobbled ankle in practice this week, and ended up that Cam Williams started a right tackle for him. And Texas, while they did well, especially in the first half running the football, and I thought they kept Malik Murphy clean for most of the game. Again, there were some key mistakes along the offensive line. They kind of put Texas behind the sticks late. And again, for Williams, just some of those false starts were pretty critical in this game. And then also, I just think Malik Murphy for this game, you got to mention him as a dud just because he just really was out of sync, out of rhythm late in this game. He had the 2 interceptions and just completed again about 30-35% of his passing attempts after the first quarter. So overall, I think Texas, you got to be happy that you survived this one. You got to move on to the next game, but there's a lot of issues to work out before you get into the TCU game next weekend, and then really difficult game, I think, against Iowa State in Ames on November 18th. But anyway, for Andrew Miller, Hook'emHeadlines.com, Hook'em Horn Show, that's pretty much it. Hook'em.